Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel, so if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land with ILTV, have no worries. It's time for our new show this week in Israel, where we'll give you the scoop on everything you need to know about the last 7 days right from Tel Aviv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, here to keep you informed. The High Court of Justice is set to hear a petition on the now frozen pluralistic prayer site at the Western Wall, and the heads of two major Jewish organizations are calling for a resolution to the Israeli cabinet's controversial decision. On Sunday, the Israeli cabinet decided to put a hold on the January 2016 agreement to build an egalitarian prayer section at Robinson's Arch at the Western Wall, and liberal Jewish movements across the world are outraged. Israeli Minister of Foreign Affairs Tzachi Hanegbi alluded recently to the possibility of the decision being overruled by the courts, and that sounding like a real possibility. The High Court of Justice is giving the state until July 12th to present its arguments for the decision, and it's scheduled the hearing for July 30th. Meanwhile, the leaders of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations and Ron Lauder, the head of the World Jewish Congress, are putting out statements calling for a resolution to the divisive issue. The Jewish Agency and conservative and reform movements have already made clear their vocal opposition to what they claim is a concession to the ultra-Orthodox parties in the current government coalition. Another mortar has hit the Golan Heights, and it took place at the same time that the Israeli Prime Minister was giving a speech in the region's capital of Katzlin, just 10 miles away. On Wednesday, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was speaking at an event to mark the 40th anniversary of the founding of Katzlin, when a stray shell from fighting in Syria landed nearby. It's the fourth shell in a week to land in the Quneitra area of the Golan Heights, and for the fourth time, the IDF has responded with a strike on a Syrian army position. This time it appears as though the mortar was fired from that position, but Israel always targets the Syrian army either way. Israeli policy is to treat all attacks coming from Syria as the responsibility of the Syrian army. The Israeli Prime Minister is saying that Israel is not involved in the bloody conflict in Syria, but he's pledging to respond with decisiveness and strength to any violation of Israeli sovereignty. Well, there's some good news today for former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. The Israeli parole board has ruled to release him from prison 11 months early, which means that after serving 16 months out of a 27-month sentence for corruption, the former diplomat will be freed for good behavior. ILTV's Aaron Porras returns with details on this story. Now, Aaron, isn't Olmert still being investigated? How did this happen?
So you're right, he was being investigated for possibly divulging secrets, having been the former prime minister, in a memoir that he is currently compiling. But that was deemed irrelevant towards, for the parole board to consider his parole. And it's not necessarily going to be pushed further beyond this point. As for his early release, it's not yet sure whether or not the prosecution that's investigating him is going to push against that or fight against that. At this time, it seems like they won't, and we know that they advised against it. Though I'll give you the rest of the details in my report.
Sounds good.
Olmert was first charged in what is now known as one of the largest cases of graft in Israeli history. The conviction in March 2014 landed Olmert a 6-year sentence, which was later reduced to 18 months upon appeal. 1 month was then added for obstruction of justice, and then the sentence was extended again by 8 months in 2016 for alleged bribery in the so-called Talansky affair. The total sentence was 27 months. Now, though, the courts have ruled to reduce Olmert's sentence for good behavior, and he could be walking free by the end of the weekend. While prison services are preparing his release, investigators are currently looking into a memoir written by Olmert for allegedly divulging sensitive information. They advised holding off on issuing Olmert's parole until the investigation concludes, or at least to include their findings in the decision-making process. But Olmert denies any wrongdoing, and the parole board has declared that they did not consider the book as a factor in their hearings. It's not yet clear whether prosecutors will attempt to appeal the parole based on their findings, but what is clear is Olmert's elation. Just take it from his lawyer.
מה שהוא אמר לי אני לא אומר לך, אני אומר לך שהוא היה מאוד נרגש, הוא היה מאוד שמח, והוא הרגיש שמה שהוא ביקש אכן מתקיים, וטוב שכך.
Tensions seem to be rising between Israel and Hezbollah, and both sides are putting out messages that imply a messy future conflict. ILTV's Aaron Porce joins us with the scoop. Aaron?
So after the Second Lebanon War in 2006, the United Nations dispersed an interim force to prevent Hezbollah, the terror group that's stationed there, from rearming itself. Unfortunately, in the 10 years since then, Iran, Hezbollah's patron, has sent them tens of thousands of rockets, surveillance drones, and a lot of other military technology.
Now, what does that mean for the border with Israel?
I wouldn't start panicking or anything like that. There's just yet, Israel hasn't been sitting idly by either.
Right.
And just recently, a top Israeli official has indicated that we've been preparing for a conflict in the north. So the reason we are talking about this today and not when something has physically occurred is because of what the terror group's leader, Hassan Nasrallah, has recently stated. He just recently issued a brand new threat against the Jewish state. So let's check out my report and I'll tell you more.
Israel is now reportedly using European states that have relations with Iran to convey the message that Israel will not tolerate continued arming of the Lebanese terror organization. In response, the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, is responding with his own threats.
ويجب أن يعرف العدو الإسرائيلي أنه إذا شن حربا إسرائيلية على سوريا وعلى لبنان فمش معلوم القتال يبقى لبناني إسرائيلي أو سوري إسرائيلي. هذا لا يعني أنني أقول أن هناك دول قد تتدخل بشكل مباشر، ولكن قد تفتح الأجواء لعشرات آلاف بل مئات آلاف المجاهدين والمقاتلين من كل أنحاء العالم العربي والإسلامي ليكونوا شركاء في هذه المعركة.
Nasrallah went on to indicate that Iran, the Assad regime, and possibly other Shiite fighters from Iraq, Yemen, Pakistan, and Afghanistan would flood into the fray, stating that the axis of resistance is all concerned in the same fate. The terror leader's words raise red flags for a few reasons, the main ones being that Hezbollah indeed has many fighters active in the Syrian civil war where they've been fighting for the Assad regime. The second is because Iran just gave the terrorist group around $70 million to pay salaries, as well as weapons that reportedly can hit anywhere in Israel, with more of both promised to be on the way. All those worries are non-starters, though, according to top Israeli officials. Last week, for example, Israeli Air Force head Amir Eshel said on a conference in Herzliya that the Air Force would be the first to respond to any Hezbollah provocation, and that, quote, what the Air Force was able to do quantitatively in the Lebanon war over the course of 34 days, we can do today in 48 to 60 hours, end quote.
It's been a few days since Israel began reducing electricity to the Gaza Strip following the demands of Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas. But now the Israeli energy minister is calling for Israel to restore full power to the coastal enclave. Energy Minister Yuval Steinitz claims that Israel is being manipulated by Abbas. A report on Israel's Channel 2 News shows Steinitz saying that Israel shouldn't be giving the Palestinian leader a hand, and that it's unacceptable for him to be determining Israel's actions. Steinitz says that if the Palestinians don't have the money to pay for electricity, he'd rather cut service to Ramallah, the capital of the Palestinian Authority. In his view, Israel does not want a humanitarian disaster in Gaza. Abbas is seeking to pressure his rivals in the Gaza Strip and possibly force them to step down. But some are concerned that further deterioration in the Strip's living conditions could mean conflict with Israel. The PA claims that the Israeli occupation and the siege of Gaza are the reasons behind the crisis. Israel has launched a series of airstrikes in the Gaza Strip after a rocket was fired into Israeli territory by an Islamist group in the coastal enclave. The Israeli Air Force struck at least 3 Hamas bases in the Gaza Strip on Monday night, targeting military sites in Gaza City and the city of Rafah near the Egyptian border. The strikes have not caused any casualties and appear to have caused no injuries. While the attack has been claimed by an Islamic State-linked group rather than Hamas, Israel says that Hamas is responsible for any attacks coming from its territory. While the Islamist terror group claims it's not interested in another round of violence, it remains deeply committed to the destruction of Israel. The organization advocates the liberation of all of Palestine, which they view as part of the Islamic Ummah. Currently, Hamas is experiencing challenges in ruling the Gaza Strip, especially since reduced electrical service is putting a serious strain on the population. Now, that's not all that's happening in Gaza. New reports are saying that there are secret talks between Israel and Hamas to release several Israeli nationals who have been kidnapped and held by Hamas, but doing so will probably come at a substantial cost. The new Hamas leader in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar, reportedly met with top Egyptian officials as well as a Fatah member who was involved in the Gilad Shalit talks. Israel's Channel 1 News is reporting that Egypt is mediating secret talks, and in April, the previous leader of Hamas implied that a prisoner exchange was being discussed. Right now, Hamas is holding 2 or 3 mentally ill Israeli men, all of whom entered Gaza on their own, as well as the bodies of 2 soldiers killed in the 2014 Gaza war. In 2011, Israel traded around 1,000 Palestinian prisoners, many of them convicted murderers, to secure the release of the imprisoned Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit. Hamas is demanding the release of 3 prisoners who were released in that previous swap and have since been rearrested for their role in the murder of 3 Israeli teenagers in 2014. It's likely, however, that they will not be the only prisoners that Hamas is demanding will be released. The Palestinian Authority's decision to withhold medical aid to the Gaza Strip may have resulted in the deaths of 3 infants in the Gaza Strip over the last 24 hours. Now, Hamas is holding the Palestinian president responsible. A human rights group in Israel is accusing the Palestinian Authority of cutting medical aid to Gaza by around 90%. And the Hamas-run Gaza Health Ministry says it's resulted in the infant mortalities. In order to receive medical treatment in Israel or the West Bank, residents of the Gaza Strip must receive confirmation from the PA that it will pay for the treatments. But with the PA cutting medical funds, over 1,600 Gazan patients are reportedly waiting for treatment. The PA has gone from approving around 2,000 referrals a month from the Gaza Strip to just 300 a month. At the same time, electricity to the Gaza Strip has been substantially cut. It's all part of Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas's plan to put pressure on Hamas in hopes that they'll relinquish control of the Gaza Strip. The U.S. State Department is forcefully rejecting rumors that President Donald Trump is having second thoughts on the Israeli-Palestinian peace process. On Tuesday, State Department spokeswoman Heather Nauert restated that Trump is making a peace deal one of his top priorities. She says that the U.S. is not pulling out in any way, shape, or form, although they understand that it's not a one-shot deal that will materialize in one meeting or one trip. Palestinian sources had told Arabic and Hebrew media that the meeting between Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and senior White House advisor Jared Kushner had gone poorly. Reportedly, the Palestinian leader was accusing the U.S. of taking Israel's side with its demands for the Palestinian Authority to stop paying salaries to imprisoned terrorists. Now, it says some meetings and conversations may be a little more difficult than others. Arabic sources are saying the U.S. is falling back a bit on its stance here, now that they're calling for the Palestinians to stop payments only to around 600 prisoners serving life sentences for the murders of Israelis. The Speaker of the Knesset, Yuli Edelstein, is in Moscow, and he is even addressing the upper house of the Russian parliament. Considering that he was a Soviet prisoner 30 years ago, that's pretty impressive. And ILTV correspondent Max Keisler has more. Now, Max, does Edelstein's visit represent a breakthrough in Israeli-Russian relations?
I'd say it's a sign that the breakthrough has already happened. For years, we've seen warming relations between Israel and Russia. This is a product of Russian pragmatism. The Soviets were constrained by ideology. They were anti-Zionist, and obviously the idea that hundreds of thousands of Jews wanted to move out of the Soviet Union, that they weren't happy with their lives, this was seen as a challenge to communism, but these are all non-issues now.
You know, Russia is clearly close to Iran. Doesn't this pose an issue with the Russian relationship with Israel? How can they be friendly to Israel under these circumstances?
Well, there's some places where Israel and Russia geopolitically are on different sides. There's some places where they're on the same side. I think both countries have an understanding that when their interests align, they can do business together.
All right, well, let's check out your report.
30 years ago, Yuli Edelstein was released from the Soviet prison system, where he'd spent 3 years in Siberian labor camps. Officially, he'd been charged with drug possession, but his real crime was teaching Hebrew to other Jewish refuseniks trapped in Moscow, the capital of the Soviet Union. Now, Edelstein has returned to Moscow as a senior Israeli politician, speaking as a guest to the Russian parliament in the same Hebrew language he was imprisoned for teaching. Along with speaking to the parliament on terrorist threats to Israel, including those from Hezbollah, a buyer of Russian weapons, Edelstein's been visiting the sites from his life as a Moscow refusenik. He's gone to the synagogue where he prayed, the courtroom where he was sentenced, and the apartment block where he was arrested. Today, Edelstein is meeting with Sergei Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister. It's a long way from the Gulag.
All right, now it's the time of the year when the streets of Jerusalem are full of Jewish American college students on birthright trips to Israel, and the Israeli Prime Minister has a message for them.
At the mega event in Rishon LeZion last night, Netanyahu told thousands of young diaspora Jews that they're joining Israeli soldiers in helping secure Israel's future. He implored them to tell others about the miracle of Israel.
This is the real Israel, and you should tell everyone about it. Everyone. And you should do so proudly. And when they attack, stand very proud and say, who are you with? The free people of Israel who defend the religious rights of all, or those who chop heads, those who show the greatest intolerance that we've seen since the Second World War? Choose. Are you with the free, or are you with the enslaved? If you're with the free, then you should stand proud with Israel and with the truth.
The CEO of Birthright International is saying that since 1999, around 600,000 Jews have gone to Israel on 10-day trips through the organization. He says that figure represents more than just a number, but a real change in the way world Jewry perceives Israel.
The Knesset has just passed a bill that will allow new immigrants to receive passports as soon as they acquire citizenship. But the Israeli police are worried that this could be a gift to criminals. Until now, immigrants have had to face a 12-month waiting period before they could acquire Israeli passports. The new law, which passed unanimously yesterday, removes that requirement completely. Knesset member Ehud, who sponsored the bill, is claiming that automatically giving passports to new immigrants will help fight the notion that they're second-class citizens. But Israeli police are worried about an entirely different issue. They claim that there's a real concern that the law could end up benefiting criminals, and more specifically, citizens from the former Soviet Union who have ties to organized crime. Police are concerned that the automatic Israeli passports could be used to enter countries to carry out crimes from drug smuggling to sex trafficking. Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, the leader of the Israel Beitenu party, says a police statement is a racist hate crime against immigrants from the former Soviet Union.
Yesterday marked the end of the Muslim holy month of Ramadan and the beginning of Eid. Eid is a festive time for Muslims worldwide, where they mark the end of the holy month of Ramadan with a feast. No one seemed happier for Eid, though, than the Israeli Arabs who marched through Yafo. And unlike traditional Eid parades throughout the Muslim world, this one features a marching band with Scottish bagpipes. The parade included dozens of young Muslim Israeli scouts marching through the streets, while onlookers cheered and shot confetti into the air. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu even got in on the well wishes.
בהזדמנות הזאת אני מבקש לברך את כל אזרחינו המוסלמים ואת המוסלמים באשר הם בחג עיד אל-פיטר שמח. כול העם ואנתום ח'יר. חג שמח. תודה רבה.
What some may call a love story is blossoming between Israel and Brazil, and it all started because of a Brazilian YouTube star named Felipe Neto.
Hello, people from Israel.
On his show just a week and a half ago, Neto began looking through YouTube videos trending around the world. And when he started focusing on Israel, things started to get really interesting. The first video he clicked happened to be a famous song in Israel right now called Tudo Bom, which means all good in Portuguese. Let's just say he couldn't believe that the Israeli song he had clicked on was full of so many references to his home country of Brazil.
Primeiro em alta em Israel, parece que é uma música. Mano, é sobre o Brasil, moleque! O clipe do maluco de Israel é sobre o Brasil. Ele já falou de São Paulo, caipirinha, cachaça e carnaval, tá? É por isso que a gente é famoso.
That's when things got crazy. After sending his Brazilian followers towards the Israeli video clip, Tudubom's popularity skyrocketed. Neto's original reaction clip then began to trend in Israel too. Both Israelis flooded Neto's comment section with love from Israel, and under the Israeli music video, even more Brazilians responded the same way, with some even writing that it was the best pop song they'd ever heard. In fact, as of now, the Israeli group's video has been viewed nearly 16 million times, which is higher than the population of Israel itself. Now, in response to the incredible reaction, Neto's released another reaction video, this time thanking his new Israeli audiences and even trying to speak some Hebrew.
So first of all, I want to send huge kisses for everyone in Israel. I never got so many support from another country besides Portugal. So it is really exciting for me and I'm really happy. So I decided to make this special video for you where I'm going to try to talk your language. I'm going to try to talk Hebrew. Let's see what's going to happen. Let's start easy. Hello, good morning.
נקודה, שלום, בוקר טוב.
נקודה. Shalom. Kote pro. What? I want a pizza.
אני רוצה פיצה.
Where's the bathroom?
איפה השירותים?
That's a very short sentence. I think you're missing some words there. Say it again.
איפה השירותים?
איפה השירותים? I need food.
אני צריך אוכל.
Dude, stop scratching your throat. I just want to speak. If you give me an opportunity to go to Israel, I'll go and I will show to Brazil all the beauty and majestic things that are in Israel. And I'm not being sarcastic. I really think it's a really, really beautiful and awesome country. Who knows? Maybe I'll go to Israel.
Please take me with you.
No.
After all this is said and done, we're pretty sure Neto will be very well received in the Holy Land. It looks like we might want to start leaving our governments out of the picture when it comes to improving diplomatic relations. After all, Israel and Brazil seem to have already embarked on a whole new love story. All right, we just can't seem to stop talking about it, or should we say her. Gal Gadot's performance as Wonder Woman is turning out to be such a huge success that it's about to become one of the biggest moneymakers in theaters this year. ILTV's Emmanuel Kadosh is here to give us the scoop. Thanks for joining us, Emmanuel.
Of course, this is one that I am not planning on missing, talking about Gal Gadot. You know, we grew up in the States, and the one representative that we had, like, in the industry, in the entertainment industry, was Gal Gadot and Bar Refaeli. So seeing her, you know, in Castro commercials, in the Fast and Furious movie, and now officially blowing up Hollywood and being on the big screen for Wonder Woman.
And, you know, even though we already loved her, I think that all the raging feminists inside of us are already excited about the fact that there is a Wonder Woman, and she happens to be Israeli, and obviously it's having a huge monetary impact. I mean, 100%. This movie is making a lot of money.
It is making a lot more than a lot of money. It is close to, you know, one of the top ones to go out recently. It is close to $660 million so far.
Right, and that could make it one of the top grossing films
in 2017. Yes, for sure.
All right, well, let's check out your report.
Let's do it. With the overwhelming amount of success, this film could in turn become the highest-earning live-action film by a female director of all time, thanks to director Patty Jenkins. The superhero movie is set to surpass the $665.7 million garnered by the 2011 animated sequel Kung Fu Panda 2, directed by Jennifer Yu Nelson. Having absolutely topped all expectations, reviewers are gushing over the Israeli superstar Gal Gadot, describing her performance as electric, which of course, to everyone here in Israel, is simply not a surprise.
Now, Emmanuel, what's interesting about this story is that this film is having so much financial success, yet Gal Gadot's salary doesn't seem to be comparing to her male counterparts from other superhero films.
Right, okay, so it's rated, it's supposed to be ranked one of the top earning films in 2017, yet she reportedly only made $300,000 on this film.
Interesting, how could that be?
So yes, a lot of people would say that's absolutely ridiculous. I would say that's absolutely ridiculous. She didn't even make $500,000. The movie made $650 million.
Right, and then we see other superheroes. I think the upcoming Batman film the man who was playing Batman made $14 million, something like that.
So
I can't remember the exact.
it was a little sketchy. The report was a little sketchy. Like all the facts weren't all there, but you can definitely expect that her next movie, first of all, will definitely bring in a lot more money, and she will definitely have, you know, some leverage on her salary for the next movie.
Well, let's hope, because we love her and she's amazing.
And she deserves it.
And she deserves it. All right.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us, Emmanuel. That's it for this week's Roundup. Tune in next Friday for our next episode of This Week in Israel. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from Tel Aviv.